isolation of an island makes it a perfect place for bad things to happen. From shipwrecks to cannibalism to nuclear testing, some islands have seen nothing less than the stuff of nightmares. North Brother Island was the site of one of New York's most costly human tragedies. On June 15, 1904, St. Mark's Lutheran Church was having their annual picnic on Eaton's Neck. More than 1,000 congregation members boarded the steamship General Slocum to make the trip out of the Lower East Side and up to the picnic grounds. Many were women and children. As the ship made its way up the East River, it was engulfed in flames within a half hour of leaving its port. The burning ship was run aground on North Brother Island, deemed by its captain to be the best choice out of a number of poor ones. That part of the river was lined with lumber yards and gas mills, making no easy choice for the beleaguered captain. That morning, 1,358 passengers boarded the ship, and 1,021 of them perished. To put that in perspective, the only larger single disaster death toll in the history of the United States was the World Trade Center attacks. Bodies from the wreckage washed up on shore on North Brother Island, where they were laid out along the pier and shoreline. It was a tragic scene, and families wandered among the hundreds of charred, drowned bodies, searching for their loved ones. Later, the captain would be tried and convicted when it was found numerous safety measures and devices had been overlooked on the ship. Fire hoses were rotted, lifeboats had been wired in place, and even the life vests were decayed to the point of uselessness, dragging poor souls beneath the river when they jumped from the burning boat. Throughout the 15th and 16th centuries, the monastery and settlements on Solovki were inhabited by monks who chronicled their daily lives, who made salt, who chopped firewood. It is not known whether or not the monks were actually the first or only settlers on the island, although their texts would lead readers to believe so. Others claim this is just a way for the monks to establish their ownership of the islands. Slowly, the island was converted into a prison colony, which then became a Soviet gulag. The first people were exiled to the island for crimes like treason, blasphemy, theft, and being a vagabond. Prisoners were detained in the buildings that had once housed the monastery, and the monks that still lived on the island were suddenly tasked with becoming prison wardens as well. More than 400 prisoners were sent to the island by Ivan the Terrible, and by 1798, more prison-specific structures were beginning to be built. Later, the prison became a concentration camp housing those that were deemed problematic during Russia's Civil War. In 1923, it became known as a camp of special destination. That was the same year that massive military executions were begun, and more than 2,000 people were killed on the island in 1937 alone. Prisoners described horrific conditions, guards using sea hooks to drag dead frozen bodies out of the camps for disposal, while prisoners fought to keep them for food. Conditions were so unbearable, guards were sadistic, and the work was menial, pointless, and backbreaking. The island of San Servolo is located off the coast of Italy. Today, its primary function is housing a museum to its rather disturbing past. The museum used to be a hospital that was founded in the 18th century and was first designated to serve wounded military troops. By the first part of the 19th century, however, it had become a Morocco-Mio, or an institution for the insane. The asylum was a religious facility under the management of an ancient religious order known as San Giovanni di Dio, an order long known for its medical expertise. One of the key methods of treatment for the insane patients was absolute isolation and repression, which made the island setting perfect. The order taught the practice of what they called moral treatment, which included practices that border on brutal by today's standards. The museum features displays of restraint devices like chains, straitjackets, and handcuffs, all of which were used on the patients. Electroshock therapy was also used, alongside other methods like an open dialogue between patients and physicians. Perhaps even more unsettling than the outright horror of other institutions of the time is the bizarre coexistence of violence and repression with the modern therapy techniques, like counseling and massage. Naziha Island is a desolate, all but uninhabitable river island 2,400 kilometers northeast of Moscow. It was to this island that 6,200 people deemed unworthy by the Russian government were exiled in 1933. There were 50,000 people total that were involved in the rehoming program, mostly criminals, those without proper Soviet citizenship papers, and the unemployed. Most were left in Tomsk, Siberia, save the unlucky 6,200 that were moved to what would become known as Cannibal Island. They were given no utensils, no tools, and no supplies. Their only food ration was a supply of raw flour that was dumped on the shoreline, causing a panicked stampede in the rush to get to it. The only water was contaminated river water, and those who drank it were subject to dysentery. Those who tried to flee the island were shot by guards. Whether they were men, women, or children, the handful of people who survived their time on the island remember corpses littering the ground, human flesh cut from the bodies, and saved to eat. Originally, Naziha was meant to be a brief stopover on the way to another settlement. It lasted a month, but cannibalism started about 10 days into the ordeal. One survivor recounts seeing a young girl tied to a tree and cut to pieces by starving prisoners. The plan had been approved by Stalin and was the culmination of a 3-year directive to clean the streets of Russia of undesirables. Thanks so much for watching. Now until next time, I hope you enjoyed this video of 4 terrifying stories from mysterious islands.